So welcome everyone to this session. After a break of 2 weeks, we will start with Sahana Bhavatu. Om. 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 Om Sahana Bhavatu. Sahanau Bhunaktu. Sahaviryam Karanavahai. Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So wishing everyone a very happy Guru Purnima day. Our humble pranams to all the Gurus and the Guru Parampara, due to which we have the ability to realize our true self, and also the ability to recognize that all the sorrows, all the anxieties, everything is all in the not true self. So we are ever grateful to our Gurus to teach us this knowledge. And with that, I think today we will do about 3 shlokas from the Guru Stotram, which really embodies what the role of a Guru is in our own lives. Akhanda mandalakaram vyaptam yena characharam tatpadam darshitam yena tasmai shri gurave namaha. Salutations are to the Guru who has showed me the abode, the one who is to be known, whose form is the entire universe, and by whom all the mutable and the immovable are pervaded. Ajnana timirandasya jnananjana shalakaya chakshurun miditam yena tasmai shri gurave namaha. Salutations are to the Guru who opened the eye of our blindness due to the darkness which covers it, which is due to ignorance, with a needle coated with the ointment of knowledge. Gurur Brahma, Gurur Vishnuhu, Gurur Devo Maheshwaraha, Gurureva Param Brahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Salutations are to that Guru who is the creator, who is the sustainer and the destroyer, who is the limitless one. Tvameva mata cha pita tvameva, tvameva bandhuscha sakha tvameva, tvameva vidya dravinam tvameva, tvameva sarvam mama deva deva, tvameva sarvam mama deva deva. Of God of all gods, you alone are my mother, my father, my kinsman, friend, the knowledge and wealth. You are everything to me. I bow down to all the Gurus who are there to support us, sustain us, and to help us in this journey of liberation. So we now will go to Bhagavad Gita. We will chant a few shlokas of the Gita Dhyanam. As we started the 5th chapter, I have actually included some other shlokas from Gita Dhyanam, as you will see here, which is the same as we chanted the last time. Om Parthaya Pratibodhitam Bhagavata Narayanena Swayam Vyasena Kratitam Purana Munina Madhye Mahabharatam Advaitam Vridavarshinim Bhagavatim Ashtadashadhyayinim Ambatvam Anusandathami Bhagavad Gita Bhavatveshini Namostute Vyasa Vishala Buddhe Pullara Vindayata Patra Netra Yena Tvaya Bharata Taila Purnaha Prajwalito Jnanamayah Pradipaha. Today is also Vyasa Purnima, so it's nice to chant the shloka on Vyasa also, Sage Vyasa. Sarvopanishado Gavaha Dogdha Gopalanandanaha Partho Vatsasudhir Bhokta Dugdham Geetamritam Mahat Vasudev Vasutam Devam Kamsa Chanuramardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum Sarvadharman Parityajya Mamekam Sharanam Vraja Aham Tvam Sarva Papebhyaha Mokshayishyami Ma Shuchaha. So we are into the chapter which is the Yoga of True Renunciation, the 5th chapter. As you all know, this chapter began with the question by Arjuna to Lord Krishna as to which path is really better to attain this knowledge, whether it is the path of the renunciation or the path of the action. So we saw Bhagavan answering this question by saying that, guess what, Arjuna, both paths are equally effective. He doesn't want to show that, okay, this is the, better path, like we tell our children too, you know what, if you do this, you can get this, but if you do this, you can actually get much more grades or whatever, right? So we push our children. Now, we see Krishna not really pushing Arjuna, but telling him that, both the paths is perfectly fine. It all depends upon where you are in that journey, right? So that's what he says. So whatever path you choose, you can become a true sannyasi. So then we saw the shloka number 3, and we will actually chant those shlokas also. He says, that in order to become a true sannyasi, you have to first recognize who is a true sannyasi. And then he says a true sannyasi is one who is really not, too agitated, not too stressed out about if something doesn't go well, if something went too well. Sometimes we get so excited when I get a promotion or when my, child gets into the next level, we get excited, right? So, but then a sannyasi is one who recognizes that all these are temporary excitements that comes in life. So a sannyasi is one who's not affected by the ups and downs and is perfectly balanced in all conditions. And he says, Krishna says, such a person is really a true sannyasi. And that is the area, that is where we need to get to. So in some ways, by giving these qualifications of a sannyasi, we see Krishna is already giving us the progress that we need to make. So, as we progress, according to Darwin's theory, right, the progress is from a unicellular to a multicellular. And according to Darwin, ultimately, a human being is the height of progress of a human being. So for us, does that mean that, once you're a human being, what is the next step? Are we going to have 6 hands, or are we going to have horns on our head? Are we going to have a halo on our head? No. So this is where, we all want to progress. We all want to progress materialistically. And after a certain level of materialistic progress, we find that we are still not happy. We are still not peaceful. So this is why, by giving the word sannyasi and to express really what are the qualities of a sannyasi, Lord Krishna is trying to tell Arjuna that, what, even you can become a sannyasi. But the path to a sannyas can be two different ways. And that is something which we will discuss a little bit today on with very simple examples. I'll just get to the next one. So Arjuna's question was, do I renounce or do I participate? Renunciation is this path of karma sannyas, and participation is the role of karma yogi. And we see that Krishna is telling Arjuna that, guess what? Why don't you take up the path of a karma yogi, not a karma sannyas? And we will see this here. Now, the thing is, it is very important for us to recognize, are we really ready for this karma yoga or karma sannyas? And many times we all want to take an easy path out. And we sometimes think the easy path is just to give up a few things. You know, it may be sometimes even, for example, if you want to fast or if you want to lose weight, right? We think that sometimes, or in the olden days, we would think, okay, if I just don't eat enough, then I'm going to lose weight, right? But now, in some sense, I look at this karma yoga versus karma sannyas as, but in this day and age, we have now all these fasts, like maybe the Dikshit fast or the 16-hour fast, everything which tells you that, well, you have to accommodate some amount of fasting, but you also have to accommodate the fact that we all are used to a certain way of living. We can't just give up everything. We need to have a very slow turnaround to actually getting to a weight loss which is sustainable, right? So Krishna understands the same thing with regard to Arjuna. He knows Arjuna is not really ready to completely renounce his whole thing and run away and give up everything, right? So, which is why he suggests the thing of karma yoga. So we'll see how that is applicable here. So last time, just in a few slides, I wanted to show about how this evolution of beings, we have, if you look at everything that is there in the world, from a tamasic to a rajasic to a sattvic aspect, you could practically show that in this level of evolution, which is, stones are tamasic, plants are, a little bit of rajas is there, but also kind of tamasic. Then you have animals and birds, which there is more intelligence coming into being. And finally, you have in human beings, you have much more intelligence. And then you have the realized masters who embody pure intelligence. And in all this, I am not going to go through too detail in here. At some point, we will be discussing this more, but this is just to show you the evolution here. And why is this important? It is important because for us as a human being, if you take the same graph here where I showed the stone, plant, animal, human, and realized master, now if you look at a human being, we see that for us to progress, we can literally see that we can actually progress from where we are as a stone human being to a plant human being, animal human being, man human being, to a superhuman being like the realized masters. We saw this last time, but I wanted to again bring this up because this is relevant to the next topic, the topic I'm going to come to. A stone human being is, we sometimes, and we ourselves are that, sometimes we just don't want to move. We are just lazy, lethargic. We procrastinate a lot. That's the level of really a stone human being. A plant human being is, well, I at least recognize that I have some energy. All I'll do is, I will eat something and I will do what the basic amount that I have to do, which is plants are good at that. They take the water and nutrients and they give back the food that we need for ourselves, right? So, but it stops at that point. So there are some of us who would like to be in that level too. We do exactly what we are told, and then we produce just enough for whatever we need. So sort of the laborer class, as Swami Chinmayananda would say, right? And then we have the animal class, which is where we have a little more aggression. We have a family. animals also have families. You feed your families, right? So, but the effect of trying to reach out stops at the animal level, right? And then finally, we have the human being, a man human being, where, we have now an ambition, we have some leadership skills, we want to actually help we want to help the world. That is where the man human being comes. A superhuman being is absolutely at the level of the great Mahatmas. So this is what we talked about. Now, another aspect to think about this level of human being development is really from a point of desire management. Now, when we talk about desire management, we all come into this world with a certain amount of desires. Otherwise, we really don't need this body. If you think about it, this body is nothing no different than this computer. I get my computer, which has its keyboard, which has all the bells and whistles that I need in order to get my work done. Now, if I didn't have the computer, of course, you might say, how did the people in the past survive? Well, they had their body and the senses, and they used that effectively, right? So all this body, mind, intellect, all the 5 sense organs, all the jnanendriyas, the hands, legs, everything has been given to us only as an equipment to manage my desires. And for this, we also, our master has given us such a beautiful prescription of the 4 ashramas in how we can manage these desires. So in the brahmacharya ashram, we are given the knowledge to know how to manage the desires. And then the grihastha ashram is where really we spend most of the energy to exhaust those desires. And then vanaprastha is the ashram where we are now slowing down. We are now recognizing that I'm giving up my all the desires, whatever I had is now getting fulfilled. I recognize that desires are giving me only short-term happiness. And I come to a grip with this knowledge, and I slowly start to recognize through spiritual lectures, through participating in bhakti yoga, karma yoga, I slowly start to understand that happiness which I was looking outside is no longer really outside, but it is actually within myself. So vanaprastha is a time when I start to slow down. I no longer participate in the world. And finally, during sannyas ashram, I completely recognize that this happiness is totally within myself. And then what do? I do not participate anything on the outside, but I totally am content. I'm very content within. I totally recognize that bliss which I was looking outside is within. So I just focus on who really am I. So this is a beautiful prescription of the ashramas that has been given, which most of us go through. And this is what Arjuna was already halfway there, right? Arjuna was where in this grihastha ashram. And here he was thinking about just jumping directly to the sannyas by not giving up. But he had a lot of desires. You know that he was still mad at Karna, and he was still mad at Duryodhana. All those desires was there. Now, had he just gone from grihastha to sannyas, there would have been so much amount of suppression, right? So this is why Krishna is trying to tell him about how he needs to go through these 4 stages. And for these 4 stages, karma yoga is the best way. Now, what is karma sannyas then? So karma sannyas is basically where now you have an option of not going through the grihastha ashram and the vanaprastha ashram and get a double promotion from a brahmacharya to sannyas ashram. Okay. So that is the karma sannyas part of it. And where you may question, how come then some people have this option? Well, there is a very practical and a logical reason for that. We see a lot of in many different of our own faiths, even in the Hindu faiths, there are, some of the faiths where Especially you would see this in the Advaita Vedanta ashrams, whether it's Ramakrishna Mission or Chinmaya Mission, or many of them, they have many youngsters who would join for the brahmachari as a brahmachari, and they study, and they do not necessarily get married, and they can, after a certain number of years, they can take up sannyas. And even here, there are many variations. Some people in some of the ashrams would take sannyas first and then study. Sometimes you study and then after then you take the sannyas. So there are many, everything is allowed in our Hindu faith, right? So this is the two paths. So the previous path, which I should have put there, is more of a karma yogi. The other path is the karma sannyas. But that doesn't mean that in this path, there is no karma yoga. There is definitely karma yoga even here, because you cannot bypass karma yoga to go to karma sannyas. It's almost like saying that, if I have to, I'm in Seattle right now. If I have to come from Detroit to Seattle, okay, there is no, the plane is not going to come to my house in Novi to pick me up and take me to Seattle. I have to take the car, I have to drive to the airport, and then I have to park my car there and then fly out, correct? So karma yoga is like that. Karma yoga is is like the driving of the car. You have to do karma yoga. And only after that can you think about doing karma sannyas. So this I want to show as there's two different paths, So some people can take this fast and direct path, which is a karma sannyas path, or, going through grahastha ashram and going through the vanaprastha is like the scenic route. Okay. Now, why do I call the scenic route? Because imagine if I have to, 1 second. Let's see, what do I have here? I have, okay. So this is the fast and direct route, the karma sannyas, this route, which includes, of course, karma yoga part, fast, and the other one is the scenic route, which is the I should have put the grahastha ashram in this, and so this is the scenic route, which most of us are in. Okay, now why do I call this as a scenic route? Because you all know, we all in the area of grahastha and this one, we are subject to so many different attractions, right? So if I'm going from Detroit to Seattle, imagine if I'm taking the a car. Okay, I will stop by in so many places, and every place I probably want to check out, how the mall is in this particular place, or what kind of food, is in particular state. All these things I check out, and then I reach this place. All these areas, I mean, as I'm traveling, those are ways in which I can actually have an opportunity to exhaust my vasanas. But in reality, what happens for all of us is that when we take the scenic route, we develop even more vasanas. And, we would have seen something in, say, North Dakota or South Dakota. I'm just thinking about those. I think I have a map of that too, actually. Just to show you that how we get so attracted to these things. In reality, the scenic route was meant to give up, but we get attracted to all the things on our way, So that's what I meant to show here. The fast and the direct route is a path of renunciation. The scenic route is this path of action. And all along here, if I just take my, a plane ride is only 4.5 minutes, 4 hours, 11 minutes. Okay. A car ride non-stop is about 34 hours, but it is not 34 hours. We know that. We will stop in every possible way. We will get attracted to so many desires and everything, but in reality, which is meant to give up. So this is how you can compare the path of renunciation, this karma sannyas yoga, or the path, the brahmacharya to sannyas, versus this path of it. And Krishna, very, through all these examples, he didn't give this example, of course, in his thing to Arjuna, but for us, if we have to really understand what this too means, we have to recognize yes, we are taking the slow car ride in our path today, as in the Grahastha ashram, right? And in this path, we are attracted to a lot of things because we have so many desires and we want to actually give that up, and we're given that opportunity to go slowly. Now, for people like us, if we were to take this plain ride kind of a thing, it is leading to a lot of suppression. So there is a reason why the two paths are there. For somebody who has been already in this path in the past, okay, some people like Ramana Maharishi and all of them who by age 9 or 10 already knew where he wanted to be. A plain ride was enough. Whereas for us, we take this path, but if we are able to recognize why this, what exactly is my desires and why I'm having all these obstacles, then this path can go faster. So it's almost like a mortgage, when you take a 15-year mortgage or something like that, we have a chance, or a 30-year mortgage. I know right now the interest rates are going up. So people are looking for mortgage. And so for the 30-year mortgage, we have a chance to pay up in 5 years or 10 years by, holding on this one, or we have a chance to do it for 30 years. Which one do we choose, right? So it is all in our hands. But this is a difference that you see on why the two different paths have been given. I hope this was helpful, but I just thought I'll present it this way. And just to say that this path of action, the scenic route, is prescribed for us because we have, Bhagavan Shankaracharya says this, we actually have these three impediments. The impediments are avidya, kama, karma. Avidya means ignorance. Kama is the desires, and those desires which pushes us to action and pushes us to accumulate all these materialism, okay? And because of all the materialism, we are so attracted to it, it pushes us down. These are the obstacles which are there in this path which is shown here. And this is the reason why we are not able to take this direct route, even though it is available for us. We are not able to do that. And this avidya, kama, karma are the thing. Now, what is avidya? Avidya is this aspect of us thinking that I am this Sunitha, this identity, this ego, which I have. Ego not in the negative sense, but ego as the identity, okay? So my identity is Sunitha today, but my true identity is I'm that absolute Brahman. So I'm not even aware of that. And that is this ignorance. I'm ignorant of the fact that I am that absolute Brahman. I am that total happiness. And because I don't recognize that I am that Brahman who is that absolute happiness, I'm constantly looking out into the world for happiness. And therefore, all these desires rise in me in the form of karma, and which then takes me to the thing of karma. So we are constantly pulled in multiple directions, and we are living in this confusion with these desires. So we need a proper desire management technique. And that is where this whole Bhagavad Gita helps us to do that. And that is the whole idea of this routes and everything which I wanted to bring in. So with that, we will chant the first 6 shlokas, which is the prelude to what today I want to get to, which is the shloka number 7. We're going to spend a lot of time on 7. Atha panchamodhyayah Arjuna uvacha Sanyasam karmanam Krishna Punaryogam cha shamsasi Yachreya etayorekam tanme bruhi sunishchitam. So Arjuna is asking the question, tell me which one is good for me, which path? So then Krishna answers, Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Sanyasa Karma Yogascha Nishreya Sakaravubhau Tayostu Karma Sanyasat Karma Yogo Vishishyate. So he's prescribing the yoga of action for Arjuna. And you just saw the arguments as to why yoga of action was good for Arjuna and for all of us. Jneyasa nitya sanyasi yo na dveshti na kankshati nirdvandvo hi mahabhaho sukham bandhat pramuchyate. So he's trying to tell us now the qualities of a sannyasi, and as a measure of progress for us on how to see who's a sannyasi. Sankhya yoga pritak balaha pravadanti na panditaha ekamapyasthita samyak ubhayor vindate phalam. He's trying to say about how mature people will recognize that both the paths are not different from each other, and they both will take you to the same goal. So that is without any question. And therefore, he wants to give Arjuna the assurance that don't worry, both the paths will take you there, but you take this one, because he's going to come up with some more examples on why. Yat sankhya prapyate sthanam tadyogairapi gamyate ekam sankyam cha yogam cha yaf pashyati sa pashyati. So this is why he says both sankhya, the knowledge, the path of the knowledge, sankhya, and the yoga are one, and he who sees, he correctly sees. Just again trying to show how important both the paths are. In the case of karma, everyone has to go through karma yoga, and once one has understood karma yoga very well, it is easy to take the path of karma sannyas. Sanyasastu mahabaho dukkhamaptuma yogataha yoga yukto munir brahma nachirena digachati. So he's trying to say here that only if you are completely established in yoga. Now, I have a nice quote from Swami Chinmayananda here on what exactly yoga is. But yoga is basically yoking the body with the mind, right? Which is where if you can get your mind to do the bidding what you want, that is being established in yoga. Yoga is not just the asanas. However, asanas also help you to reach that state of complete mind control. So he's trying to show that without a good mind control, it is hard to actually reach that state. And therefore, that's what he's saying, dukkham aptum ayogataha. Without that proper mind control, it is impossible. And renunciation is really not for everyone, because you have to go through step-by-step process. But once we know that, then immediately, na achirena digachati, you can immediately attain that state. So now, having said so much, the next shloka is a beautiful ladder of progress. You will see how Lord Krishna explains to Arjuna from the level of yoga yuktatma, to that Brahma, the Brahman state, where he says, yoga yuktaha munihi brahma achirena digachati. So when you have that yoga, you can, somebody with yoga becomes a munihi, and not only munihi, he attains the state of Brahman. So that ladder is beautifully explained in shloka number 7. So we will chant that. Yoga yukto vishuddhatma. Yoga yukto vishuddhatma. Vijitatma jitendriyaha. Vijitatma jitendriyaha. Sarvabhutatma bhutatma. Sarvabhutatma bhutatma. Kurvannapi na lipyate. Kurvannapi na lipyate. So it's a beautiful shloka where many things have been talked about. First, the qualifications are talked about, and the attainment of Brahmanism talked about. And once somebody attains that level of understanding that he or she is Brahman, Atman, and how the person sees everything, what is the result from that? That is also very beautifully explained here. So like I said earlier, in the previous shloka, he says, yoga yuktaha becomes Muni, and then the Muni becomes Brahman. So the steps that he says here is, once that person, that yoga yuktaha, the person who is so well integrated in his mind and intellect and body, such a person becomes Vishuddhatma. And I will go through this even more detail about how that steps are given, So first is that integration, and that person becomes Vishuddhatma, which is who is a pure mind. And once somebody has a pure mind, that person becomes Vijitatma. Vijitatma, which is he has conquered his body. Now, you may say, how is the word Atma? Many times we think about this word Atma as the soul, or Sukshma Sharira, right? That's how we look at the word Atma. But it all depends upon the context. This is something which we all have to understand. In Bhagavad Gita, the word Atma can mean three different things. One is, it can mean that absolute consciousness, that it can mean that. It can also mean the mind, and sometimes it can mean the body also. And I think in shloka, in chapter 2, for example, is one or two shlokas where you see that word Atma is being used for the body. So here, Vijitatma clearly means one who has conquered the body. And Jitendriyaha, Jita means victory, right? Indriya, Jita Indriyaha. So one who has control over the Indriyas, the five sense organs. And such a one. And then here, and then finally he says, that person reaches a state where he's a Sarva Bhuta Atma Bhutatma. One who sees his own self in all beings. Sarva Bhuta, he sees in all beings. One who sees his own self, Atma, in Bhutatma. So actually it is Bhutatma, the one self in all beings, he sees in everything. Such a person, Kurvan, even Kurvan, meaning anything he does. Okay, whatever that person does, nothing really affects such a person. So that's the beauty of this shloka here. So this is why I wanted to put this word yoga, which is from Swami Chinmayananda's example, or Swami Chinmayananda gives a beautiful, he says, any attempt of the mind to rise from the lower values of its present existence to a healthier and diviner scheme of living is yoga. So yoga it comes from the word yuj. Yuj is the dhatu or the root in Sanskrit, which means to yoke, to yoke two things. And so for us, it's a question of wherever I am I, and again, it is for us to define what my next step is. Whether it's in the form of diet, I'm giving up something, improving my diet, or improving the way of my living, improving the way I'm having a relationship with my people around me. So from wherever I am to the next level, that is yoga. So yoga is any attempt of the mind to rise from the lower values to a healthier living. So I wanted to put this up because it's again the path of, the idea of progress. So let's see that ultimate progress for us, what the shloka, and the shloka is really important from that angle, is it is trying to show that our ultimate destination, what is really liberation, sometimes we hear this word liberation being used so much, as human beings, I have to attain moksha, or I have to liberate myself. What am I liberating? Where am I liberating from? Right? So this is why the word yoga is also important. I am liberating myself from a lower level of existence, where today, for example, if I'm, I don't know, sometimes I use some gross examples, so forgive me for that. If I take, half a bag of chips or something like that, then I'm now converting that bag of chips to maybe a bag of grapes, that is yoga. Or if I'm, using my car all the time to go somewhere, I try to walk a little bit and then do something, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. But the point is that every step I take, ultimate goal for us is pure love. It's just pure empathy, compassion for everyone. Now, this empathy and compassion for everyone doesn't come just like that, right? It comes only when I see somebody as absolutely no different from who I am in every possible way. So that is that. So seeing oneness in all is that absolute progress. And that is what is you see in this particular shloka. It tells you slowly about how that is done. So let's look at that same ladder here. It starts with first somebody who is established in yoga, somebody who recognizes that I need to progress this step by step. So that is yoga. Somebody has to recognize that, because many times, I showed that other examples of stone men, plant men, all that, stone human being, plant human being, etc. There may be so many people who may not even recognize a change is needed. So yoga is something like a change, a transformation. I need a transformation. Somebody who is convinced that they need its transformation. It can start at that level. So a yoga yuktaha is that person who is at the lower level of that yoga, is where I'm saying. But at the level where Krishna is talking to Arjuna, even that word yoga itself has to be taken to ultimately as a yoga yukta purushaha is somebody who basically does nothing for herself or himself, who basically attributes everything to that Lord, doing that with that Lord as a worship of the Lord, and then doing that and receiving the results as prasad from the Lord. That is a person who's established in yoga, who's established in karma yoga. And this is the first step. When such a person does that, that person leads to having a very pure mind, Vishuddha Atma. That person becomes a Vishuddha Atma because through that karma yoga, he or she has purified the mind. And that is at the level of Vishuddha Atma. And then such a person has actually even conquered the body, because no longer such a person is doing things only for himself or herself. The person is really trying to, move ahead to being of service to a lot of people. And such a person is effortlessly, gets good thoughts, absolutely noble thoughts. And person is really trying to conquer the senses, Vijitatma. Of course, the next step is Jitendriya. The person has anything that person is being given, the person is happy. No longer is a person really looking for, absolutely the most tasty things or, the most fancy things. The person is very content, because at the end of the day, all the likes and dislikes what we have is at the level of the senses. It's only at the level of senses that the mind gathers a lot of information. So such a person is, has conquered the senses also. And at this point, the person becomes a Muni. So Muni is Manana Shilavan, or a person who is a very contemplative person. And this person now is really a master within themselves. And then that person gets to the level of Sarva Bhutatma. So this is why this whole thing is, again, I wanted to put here about how to the level of Jitendriya, you can see this oneness of every, becomes a Muni. Now, at the level of Muni, what happens is you are so clear in your mind. No longer are you, you're very contemplative. You recognize what are the most important things. You recognize that ultimately your boss, the boss of yourself is nothing but your mind itself. And such a person who's able to be a master of himself, in such a person, he recognizes that he is the boss and his mind is the slave. Because if you don't, then imagine if you have to sit for meditation, right? If you have a lot of desires, this is what in a typical, this is just a joke on meditation. Here you have the meditation master trying to guide the people. And this is a typically, in your mind's browser, clear your cache, now delete your history, now navigate to blank page, web page. You're trying to help your students to, clear the history, right? So Muni is a person whose mind is so clear. There is nothing which is helping him or her, disturbing his contemplation. So you literally have to go through these steps before you can even think about meditation. Meditation in its absolute sense. We can do concentration, we can do contemplation, but absolute meditation needs to be at a point where we have complete control over our senses. And this is, again, such a beautiful step-by-step process to recognize how we can move forward and how this really helps in the progress towards going to Sarva Bhutatma Bhutatma. If we don't have this kind of knowledge, then what will happen is, I want to put a small joke here, but also to say that this is why our scriptures really have to be understood, because unless and until we follow the scriptures and we achieve the clarity of mind, if we don't do that, we'll never really understand who we are. And this is why we find that, in the meditation world, now there are so many more apps and everything coming, but yet we may not necessarily see progress in the world because the scriptures have not been understood. So there's this joke about how, there was this professor who basically what he did was he wanted to demonstrate a concept to his students. So he takes a glass of, I don't want to say orange juice here because it may not work. He took a glass of rum, okay? He took a glass of rum, and then while the students were all watching, he just put one worm in the glass of rum. And within a few seconds, the worm got destroyed, okay? So then he asked the students, okay, so what is the lesson you get out of this? Okay, he basically wanted to say that if you drink too much, alcohol is bad for you, too much of alcohol is bad for you. So one student got up and said, well, if you drink rum, all the worms in your stomach will die. Okay. So this is how, scriptures are. In the sense, if we don't clearly understand what has been given in our scriptures, and we jump into doing something, we will never achieve the results, right? So for example, many people think that, okay, if I take some drugs, for example, I will be happy. Yes, to that extent, they may be happy, but they don't know that they are happy at that moment, right? So how can you really jump into things where you don't know the level of how it should be done? So too with meditation, for example. It's so very important. Here, the ladder of progress is if we follow the steps of that Vishuddhatma, then Vijitatma, Jitendriyaha, each one, literally we can come up with a prescription of what are all the minute steps between each one of them. And then when we come to that absolute meditation, which is come after a lot of Shravanam, Mananam, and Nididhyasanam, it is at that point that you can actually you can reach that state. But let us see then who is a Muni, right? To this extent, we can say, we know, who's a, who, that, a Vishuddhatma is the one who is a pure mind. And then we can say who is a Vijitatma is one who has conquered his sense, his body, Jitendriya, who has conquered his senses. But a Muni who is at that level now, who has reached that level, such a person is incapable of temptation. And once when we reach that level where I'm not tempted, now that doesn't mean that I should not have anything but water and I don't know, just plain oats or things like that. We can of course have whatever is given to us, but I'm not going to it. If it comes to me, I have it, I enjoy it. So a Muni is a person who's incapable of temptation. And it is only at this point really that the path of knowledge really works. The path of jnana works. This is because the mind has to be really purified. It has to be available for us for teaching. It has to be available for what the scriptures are trying to say. And it is at this point that we actually get to the Shravanam, Mananam, and Nididhyasanam. And because there is so much amount of logic that is prescribed in the scriptures, and in order to understand that logic which is given here, the transformation will not just happen just like that. So the contemplation, all that is possible only at this point in time. And that is why a Muni is a Mananashilavan, because he or she is contemplative, who's able to recognize the knowledge. And now one may ask though, why do we need this knowledge itself? Because this knowledge is important for us to recognize that I'm no longer at this level of body, mind, intellect, where at the level of body, we are so identified today with the body, mind, intellect, where we take on these roles of perceiver, feeler, thinker, and we interact in this whole world of objects, emotions, and thoughts. But I'm actually way beyond this. And I'm actually at this level of an unconditioned experience, which, because of my vasanas, I'm unable to see that. In order for me to recognize this, I have to go through all these steps to get to that level. So that is why once I do this, ultimately, I get to the level of Sarva Bhutatma Bhutatma, which is, I see that I'm none other than this consciousness. This consciousness, which is represented by Om here, that is where we need to get to. And once we do that, and that is why Sarva Bhutatma Bhutatma is that ultimate step of progress for us in order to get to that level. And when we are at this point, we see that the world is basically an extension of ourselves. A Muni or a Jnani at that point, when he or she looks at the world, he doesn't see really different people. What he sees is basically his own self, which is expressing in different packaging. They're all nothing but the package material is different. It's like, our phones, they come as different phones, but ultimately what I'm using the phone to do is the same thing. They just come as an iPhone or an Android, Samsung, all these things. The packaging is different, but the essence is nothing but that absolute consciousness. So this is why we see great Mahatmas who have come in this world. They're able to love everyone unconditionally. There's just nothing. They don't see any of the colors of our skin or anything. They don't even see our flaws. It doesn't matter whether it's a criminal, whether it is a baby, whether it is an innocent person, nothing. Everything is the same for a great Mahatma, because that person ultimately sees only his own self or her own self as consciousness, and it is that same consciousness in everybody. So that's what the shloka number 7 talked about. So Sarva Bhutatma is the person starts identifying herself or himself with that consciousness. Just like today, we are so identified with our body, mind, and intellect. That same level of identification, the person is just turned around and is now identifying with the consciousness. And such a person then, is basically loves, like I said, everyone unconditionally. And when such a person does that, for such a person, anything and everything that person does, it doesn't affect that person, because he or she knows why they're doing it, or they're identified with the consciousness. So nothing else really matters at that point. So the next 2 shlokas which are coming up, shloka number 8 and 9, we will chant them. And they're very self-explanatory. We will chant them and do a little bit of an explanation, but next week we will just go a little bit, but we'll go to 10 and 11 next week, after spending a little bit of time here. Naiva kinchit karomiti, Naiva kinchit karomiti, Yukto manyeta tattvavit, Yukto manyeta tattvavit, Pashyan shrunvan sprashan jigran, Pashyan shrunvan sprashan jigran, Ashnan gachan swapan shwasan, Ashnan gachan swapan, Ashnan gachan swapan shwasan, Naiva kinchit karomiti, Yukto manyeta tattvavit, Pashyan shrunvan sprashan jigran, Ashnan gachan swapan shwasan. So in the previous shloka, Krishna talks about the Sarva Bhutatma, one who is identified with the consciousness. Such a person, Kurvan, whatever he does, it doesn't affect him. That's what he said, right? So here he says that such a person who is a tattvavit. Tattvavit is a person who has realized that consciousness. Tattvavit. Such a person, na eva kinchit karomi iti. Aham, whatever, na aham karomi, I am not acting. Such a person will not say that, I did this, I did that, or whatever. Such a person is identified with the consciousness. And so such a person would use a language like, my eyes did this, my ears did that, my nose did that. So what were all those things? Like in simple, so here he is given in this shloka all the organs of knowledge. These are the 5 organs through which we gain knowledge into a system. So, and that is the eyes, ears, skin, nose, and the tongue, right? So that 5 is explained here by Pashyan, seeing, Shrunvan, hearing, Sprashan, sparshan, touching, Jigran, smelling, Ashnan, eating. And then the organs of action, the karmendriyas. So these are the jnanendriyas. And now we have the karmendriyas, which is the hands, legs, genital organs, etc. That he's starting here with Gachan, Swapan, Shwasan. And we'll chant the next shloka here. Pralapan Visrajan Ghrunnan. Pralapan Visrajan Ghrunnan. Unmishan Nimishan Api. Unmishan Nimishan Api. Indriyani Indriyartheshu. Indriyani Indriyartheshu. Vartanta iti dharayan. Vartanta iti dharayan. So the organs of action, which started in the previous shloka, we have Pralapan, Visrajan, Ghrunnan. So Pralapan speaking, again using the mouth. Visrajan, which is discarding, discarding all the waste from the body. Ghrunnan, the ability to hold. And then Unmishan, which is opening of the eyelids. And Nimishan, which is closing of the eyelids. So in all this, the Mahatma recognizes that he or she is not doing anything. Okay. So then who is really doing all this? He's saying it is only the senses, the whole senses which is attached to the body, mind, intellect equipment, that is interacting with the world outside, which is Indriyartheshu, with the sense objects. They are the ones who are interacting with it. But I, who am consciousness, is really not doing anything at all. So that is the level for us in terms of progress. Today, we are so attached to our mind and intellect and our relationships and our objects that identification has to be cut. That is the Hridaya Grandhi, as they say, it has to be cut. And ultimately, to identify myself with that consciousness. That is the knowledge which is being talked about in these two shlokas. So we'll spend next week on these two shlokas just a little bit to clearly understand this relationship and how can we grapple this. And if you have any questions on this, please do send me a WhatsApp note and we will address that. Okay. And this is, we'll discuss this particular thing along with that. Sarve bhavantu sukhinah, sarve santu niramayaha, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschit dukkha bhag bhavet. Om shanti shanti shantihi. Om purnamadav purnamidam purnat purnamudachyate purnasya purnamadaya purnameva vashishyate. Om shanti shanti shantihi. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Thank you.